Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Animals. I have a very special guest tonight, and we're going to be talking about many different things, and her name is Maria Katsamannis, I believe, if I pronounced it right.
A++.
I hope, I have a habit of, unfortunately, massacring last names, but that's okay. And what Maria does, she is a classical dressage trainer, amongst other things. So there's many, many attributes to this, and she has published a book, which we'll get into later on as well. But let me ask you this question first, Maria. How did you get started in this business with the horses? I mean, was it like, most of us when we're, knee high to a grasshopper,
Yes. I was riding, I guess, right there? Yes. I have a soft voice, so I was yelled at for not speaking louder. So I started when I was younger. I was when we had moved back to Greece. I'm Greek originally. So and kind of rode as a child back then. They had academies. It wasn't like here. When you would go formally into an academy, and so we started as young kids. They would have you long lining before you rode.
Oh, yes, I remember those days.
And you really learned all the basics. I mean, it's a whole different way of working. Now, really dedicated students today, I have them go through it. But long lining, then you were kind of on a horse without reins. That's for another 3 or 4 months. And if you passed that, then you kind of graduated to a horse that was, like in today's standards would be like a third level horse, second level horse, that a little bit more balanced, a little bit more educated. So you started that way. And then when we came back to the United States, it was a bit of a shocker because it was the opposite. You came to horses that were very green, and if you got better, then they put you on the more sophisticated horses. So my first
kind of a backward way, don't you think?
Very, and I could see that how people can get out of it early on. So we all come with this love, this great passion. But when your early experiences are riddled with falling off and terror, and or as I remember it, younger was, some of the ways of being with horses involved being a little bit brutal, a little bit, and it wasn't my style as a kid.
Yes, I know. I was my grandfather taught me. I think they told me the first time I sat on a horse, I was 6 months old with him. After he was done riding, and then it was ponies, and then I had military. Where I went to ride, they were most of them were military men.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's
so we were, very, very rigid.
Right.
And you listened, and if you didn't listen, you were asked to leave basically, which I thought was very good.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. You say that's what it was. Most of the guys when I was younger in Greece, they were all from the French, or we had a lot of people in Russian train, and my family, we didn't have a lot of money. But what ended up happening was, if they saw you were dedicated, they'd take you on for free.
Right.
So you'd end
for
up
free.
Yeah, you just tag along, and you'd be kind of the barn rat, and you'd do anything to be near them. And what would bore some kids, most kids would want it to be jumping or doing some adventures, galloping around. But if they saw that you were kind of disciplined and they showed up every day and you showed up, they would give you a lot, and I was very fortunate. But they showed me a lot of discipline. These guys were old school.
That's how I was raised. The discipline was terrible. I thought I was in the army. Honestly, I really did. And they yell and they scream and they But I did become a barn rat. Every day after school, I'm at the barn. Here I am, like 10, 11, 12 years old. But the perks were, you got to ride the instructor's horses.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'd give you a little side lesson, really quick. And, you're doing that wrong. Let me show you real quick. Mm-hmm. Do it this way and do it that way, and watch your hands and your legs, and, heels down, heels down, heels down. Get your weight out of your shoulders. That was my problem.
Mm-hmm.
I still do every now and then. And if I come to you, which I probably will, because that may be my next endeavor. I've always enjoyed watching dressage. I've always used dressage, level 1 and, training level 1, basically maybe a little level 2. Just to get my own horses prepared.
Right.
I think it's a wonderful process.
Mm-hmm.
But then I went into Western.
See, now that they are always, this is what one of the things I've been trying to help people understand a little bit more. I'm not is we were talking before with Bruce and Richard here, that there's so many divisions. And so I think regardless of whether you're Western, if you're jumping, equitation, a good foundation,
Exactly. Makes the
classical,
horse.
classical dressage, a horse, I mean, from as a purist, I would say, if a horse is schooling on the flat, at least first, second level, then they're ready to jump. I came here and I saw the opposite, as a child. So it, really motivates you to, part of my work is just helping educate people a little bit more.
I think part of the problem in this country is they want to go from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
They don't want to go,
Yes.
they don't want to take the steps to get there
Yeah.
the right way, to get the horses ready. Because, even my babies, they were ground trained, not even on a lunge line in the beginning, just on a lead line. And, you do the porcupine. I called it a porcupine. And you get them to yield, and you get them to flex, and you get them to bend. And then you go into a lunge line. And then when they're really good on a lunge line and they're almost 3, then they get a saddle on their back. And you're still not on. I'm still not on their back. I normally didn't get on my babies until they were at least 3. For a couple of reasons. Number one, I want my legs to last me a lifetime. I also felt if their knees weren't closed, I wasn't getting on them. I wanted everything solid, but that's me. I'm slow. I'm from the old school. I think I go back to the way I was trained. You have to crawl before you walk before you run before you, I guess, take a leap. But I was on your website and I was watching how you were training this one horse and the things that you did before you even got on him. Can you discuss a little bit about what you do before you even get on your horses?
So I think one of the videos on my website, I was about 2-3 years ago, I was in Europe a lot more than now, because now we have our farm in Ringos, I have a home base. I'm not traveling internationally as much. But back then, I would do a lot of clinicking in Spain, and Spanish is not my language. I don't speak Spanish, I understand it. But I was mostly in Barcelona, which is in Catalonia, and they speak Catalan. So I really didn't understand anything. I was really lost. So when I would show up for these clinics, I have a translator, and so I would kind of educate folks that were coming in for help. And one of the things that they were looking for was, they wanted a horse that was safe. They want to feel that their horse is with them. When we were kids, we had this vision. I know for me, a lot of the mythology I grew up with, Alexander the Great, a lot of because, coming from Greece, we had a lot of history around equestrian. Xenophon was the first writings on horsemanship. And, even as brutal as the times were back then, he wrote of the horse as not as a slave, but as a partner. He called it a servant, which is kind of a step up from slave, I suppose. But the idea that we all want that, and then somehow we get into these funny relationships where then we're sitting on a horse and we're getting bucked off or they're having problems. So I would show up at these places where I don't speak the language and start to give people tools, and I realized that people, were sitting on horses that weren't really with them. So that there is a number one problem. So how do you identify if you're together? The togetherness factor. Number 2, the horse's comfort. You're sitting on an animal like no different than we wake up in the morning. We want a good stretch.
Absolutely.
We might have, gosh, I've been walking in that mud in the last week and my hips are sore. I mean, I can't imagine the horses that are out there feeling the same way. So you want a way to assess who your partner is on a given day. So it starts with groundwork. For not to just get the beans out of the horse, as the term I said they use here a lot is getting energy out, but really as a way to connect deeply. Is my partner with me? Are we together? Are we one?
Right, because you need to be.
But the problem is deeper than that, I think. Are we one is a big question. It's more than the horse. Most of us are not even one with each other. People I know are married and they're not one. We're supposed to be, take vows to be one. But a lot of us don't really know what that means, and a lot of us are scared of it and what that means to be one. So I would travel there and try to teach people how to use groundwork to assess the physical comfort of the horse, their physical readiness, their mental readiness, and then their oneness. And so by doing those things as a precursor to riding, it's all a probabilities game. The probability of having some of those traumatic accidents that I hear of, you minimize because you can look at your partner in their entirety before you get on and make a sound assessment. Also, a lot of the groundwork, both lunge work and in-hand work, allows you to develop an instinct about, you know what, do I really want to get on today? And to honor that.
Right.
And then B, I think it allows you to, yeah, that's the big thing, I think, is just to establish whether or not you are ready to get on and trust your instincts. And I think trusting your instincts is a big problem. And I think the problem stems from even our childhood. Like, you're given a plate of food. Somebody tells you you have to eat it because they're starving children in Africa, even though you don't want to eat it. So we at early age numb out our instincts. So then when we come to the horse, which is another animal, and I really firmly believe, and we write about this in the book, that we have more in common with the horse than not. We are mammals. We are animals. We don't want to know that. Sometimes it's beneath us to think of ourselves maybe that way, but we are very much that with them. So groundwork and handwork helps you develop an eye for what's correct in your horse, so when they're not comfortable, you can see it. And it helps you develop and honor your own instincts about, should I get on or off? Now, for me, as a clinician, I go someplace, I have 3 days to make a miracle happen. I have to decide in that given moment, yay or nay. Do I want to get on here? And this is my bread and butter. So you learn very quickly to trust that. And I see a lot of people taking risks with their horses, getting on animals,
on a day they shouldn't be.
Yes.
Horses have bad days just like people. They have moods just like people.
They do.
And if they wake up on the wrong side of the stall, if I'm on the wrong side of the bed, I don't want anybody pushing me around.
Mm-hmm.
So I can certainly see where you're coming from with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you. In this country, we are almost, doesn't matter. We have to get on anyway.
Like
we
you
have to get it
prove
done.
Something.
Yeah.
There's like this a lot of ego around it. And as a psychologist, because the psychology part of me, I mean, it is like a lifelong journey to check the ego, make sure we can put that aside. And if I tell people all the time, you'll never go wrong. You'll minimize the risk of you ever getting hurt if you come from the place of, are you okay?
Right.
Are you okay? How are you doing today? Are you well? What can I do for you? And that means taking a little bit of our ego out of the equation. And if you come from that place, you always make better decisions. You may not ride that day, or you may just lunge that day. You may just decide to massage and groom your horse that day. Mm-hmm. You may decide just to go grazing that day. But at the end of the day, you're preserving that core relationship, that friendship, because you're coming to the horse as a friend. Right. What can I do for you? And how many relationships in our lives do we listen to a friend, and we always have to, in psychology and social psychology, they talk about this, how in conversation, the idea of empathic listening, really listening to someone for a full hour, is unhumane. No, not inhumane. It's unhuman. In other words, it's not natural to human beings to be that way. We naturally want to one up or come back with a better story, or it's in our natures.
Right. I can see that.
So I tell people, like, if you can, horses are here to make us better with each other. I find people with the shows, Let's Talk About Animals, and this goes for horses, cats, dogs. People escape into the horse world as a way of evading connecting with other humans. And I tell them, if you want to be a great horseman, great with your horse, be good with humans. Take 1 hour of a week to really sit and really listen to someone without coming back with anything. Just practice that. It's all about them. It's not about you. Because you come to your horse that way, and I've seen miracles happen. I just came back from Wellington, Florida. Just sitting on horses that miracles happen when you come to horses that way. And it's just that simple. It's one of the first steps. It's a simple one. What can I do for you? Are you comfortable? And so the groundwork and the in-hand work helps you assess that, helps you make those determinations.
Yeah, I agree with you. I really do. Like I said, when I saw how
Richard's not choking. Are you okay?
Richard's still recuperating.
There you go.
when I watched the video on your website, so if anyone's out there and you go to my Facebook page, you'll see her website right there. Go and watch her video on how you do the in-hand work. You're just on a lead line, and then you go to the lunging before you even get on, and it's the expression on your face. You're very caring.
Yeah, and you have to, and I tell people you have to care, but don't just care for the horse, care for someone in your life. Don't see the riding, because if you have a clinic coming up in March, you have to come, Kat, because we have an equisizer in the barn, and so we put people on this mechanic horse, yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, people wait to get to their horse to find that connection. If you practice those things outside of the barn,
Right.
then it becomes that much more natural. So be a good friend to another human. Then you come to your horse and you're a good friend there too. Just like if you're waiting around to improve your posture on the saddle, well, do that when you're driving. Do that
Right.
when you walk. Take that position in every other area outside of the barn. And guess what? Now that becomes automatic. So by the time you sit on the saddle, boom, it's there.
It's
you don't
there.
have to think about it. It's one less thing you have to worry your pretty little head over.
Now, if you had a client on your barn and they're going through their pre-riding phase, as I'll call it right now, rather than saying the whole 9 yards, and you see something that maybe your client doesn't see, would you come up and say and ask them, "Are you going to ride today?"
Say that part again. Are you going to what?
Would you ride today? Say, let's just say the horse was kind of not acting normal. I'm trying to put this in. You know what? I have 3 questions here, and I think I'm trying to get all 3 out at the same time.
One
So
at a
we're going to
time.
do one at a time,
Yes.
because I'm getting confused. When you have a client, and I'm sure you watch them, if you're training them, do some of the groundwork before they even get on.
Yeah. So in other words,
It's-
I'm in the arena and I'm watching someone else doing their
Right,
warm-up.
doing their warm-up,
Okay.
right.
Are they and
Okay.
they're a student of mine, or is this a lesson?
It could be a lesson.
Okay, it's a lesson. Let's imagine it's a lesson.
It's a lesson. It makes it easier.
There you go.
Okay, now, my first question is, if you see the horse reacting in an odd way, not a normal way for that horse to react, would you look at the horse first or the person that's handling that horse first?
Give me an example of an odd way.
Okay, the horse is being a little skittish, a little tense, and this horse really is normally very relaxed and very calm. Now, maybe your client is not smiling. There might be a frown, and you see her, most women, we tense up our jaws and our neck and our shoulders, which is where a lot of my stress goes.
Yeah.
Who would you deal with first? Would you talk to your client first and say, relax, calm down, or are you having a good day today, or how's things going? What's on your mind, because it's not here? I mean, I would never say it's not here, but I mean, how would you go about talking to a client that way, or a
Right.
student?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Tricky microphone.
Yeah,
You never know when you're on live.
I know it's falling on me. It just wants to come with me. Good microphone. What a good boy. See, this is what happens when you're all day. Good job. Good boy. So
Or how can you distinguish?
How can you distinguish?
If it's a horse doing something, or if it's your student?
right.
I mean,
So-
the horses do sense our moods.
Absolutely, and by the way, I can explain also if that's something that viewers might be interested in. I could explain some of the reasons why that is. So maybe let me answer this in. That's a really deep question, actually, and there are many layers to it. So
That's why I was having a hard time getting it, because there are so
you
many
poor
layers.
thing. There's many layers to it, and I can't answer it in one sentence. But
Well, we can take a half hour and answer this one.
yeah, so as an empiricist, one of the things as a trainer I try to do and remove myself from, because even though I can feel or see things, I always come from the place of substantiating it. In other words, I might see a person and know them deeply because we've lessoned for a long time, and I know their issues. People can't hide, even if they
Yeah.
don't speak to me, the horse will tell me. The minute you sit on your horse, I'll know everything about how you are in bed, how you are as a parent.
Really?
Yes. So there's no
Wow.
escaping that part. Because what happens is when you're sitting on a horse, and I'm not the first one to really see this, great horsemen have understood that. Maybe I'm articulating it in a little better way. When you sit on your horse, who you are is 10 times magnified. So if you're really angry that day, or if you're fearful, or if you're having just a really insecure, that you can see it. That's why it's a very vulnerable place for people. And as an instructor, for me, in a very privileged place, because I see the person's vulnerable, because I see them. They can't. It's like they're nude. They can't hide. So yes, there's a how do you say, symbiotic responsibility of the rider, effect of the horse on the rider, and so it's not unidirectional. That's number one. In assessing a situation, I look at the person and I start to look at my environment, and I say, well, okay, I've seen this couple before, and they seem to be doing okay. Something's different today. What's different about my environment? So I'll start scanning my environment. Is there a bulldozer going there? Is the farmer next door haying? Is there somebody running around, a dog? And I'll start to eliminate the external variables, and then, just very quickly in my head. And then I'll start to think of the time of day. Is this their usual time of day? Are they exercising or working in the spot they've been there before? What are the other variables associated with it? Because I've had people that are pretty confident, but then their horse is not that day. It could be because of something different.
Right.
And of course they get scared and then they feed into it. Yeah. So you really take a look at the whole picture, and I try to, my first instinct, knee-jerk reaction, is to look at my entire environment. If I know that rider, if I know that unit, if this is a pattern that they have, then I'll, but of course, as a psychologist, I know the effect of people. Just to give you a sense of how horses can feel us. People don't realize that, because I see a lot of people don't want to take responsibility for being the culprit in that relationship. They don't want to say, well, it's my horse's fault and he should know better, or silly things. We are, as I was saying before to Bruce, we are energy. We create from the sinoatrial node of our heart. We actually we create electricity. As we're sitting here right now, Kathy, there's what they call a torus, and it's literally a sphere that's around me and is around you, and it's because our heart is emitting electricity. We're mostly water. We're made of water, so we have that ability to create a resonance. We as human beings have something called a resonance property. As an academic at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School for 12 years, I studied heart rate variability. That was my primary research. So then it's interesting how it overlaps with the horses. But so the point being that we are energy. We have this little sphere.
Excuse me.
That's why
Very
sometimes
dry throat.
Yeah, drink your water, Kathy. That's why sometimes you can walk into a room and feel very comfortable with someone, but not someone else. You just have a sense that that person's, you want to move in their direction, and you have a sense that with the other person you want to move away from them. So we are consisting of that torus. So we have information that's coming between you and I on an umbra level that we don't even know, that's being kind of discussed. And they've shown that a lot of the Russian studies that declassify now can help us understand how molecules transfer information. There's a whole little highway. I won't go into that now, but it's real. In other words, your horse will pick up your vibes, as they say. The thing of it is that the horse itself has a heart 5 times larger than ours. So their torus is 5 times larger than ours. So we overlap. Our torus is overlap. So there's information from the horse, information from us. So as we get nervous, they get nervous. So you can.
And you're feeding off each other, basically.
Feeding off each other. So when I hear people, it saddens me greatly when I hear people putting down their horse like, it's a horse's fault, that they don't realize the responsibility that they have in that equation, just from like a molecular level, because we are exchanging. And so the problem sometimes is that the human being themselves don't even realize what the problem is, because we're so unconscious of our own anger. Like, people are functioning through the day, they're getting by, and they don't even know that they're angry. They don't even realize that they have all this negativity going on. And
that's true.
We just go, and then we get a little pushy with somebody, or we get a little nasty with someone else, and we don't really know where that's coming from until we stop. And when we stop, we realize, why am I so angry, or why am I so unhappy?
Right.
And horses, they don't lie in that way, and so that's why I tell people, we're fortunate. We are very, very fortunate because we don't need horses. And I say that, and people say, well, of course I need my horse. We don't need them in the sense of transportation or the way our forefathers did, but we need them on a higher consciousness level.
We're
we
going
need-
again.
Oh, we're dying. It wants to come. Oh, let me put it like this. Oh, sorry.
To keep it
Whoa, boy, whoa. Don't go any. Hold your horses.
You're right. It's a
But
little untamed tonight.
On a tame tonight. Whoa, I gotta brought out the best in me. There we go. But what happens is I think that horses come to us to make us better people if you're up for the challenge. And so I don't know if that's answers your question.
It does to a point. Would you stop someone from getting on your horse if you saw
Yes.
an issue?
I have. I mean, I have stopped. I mean, I would say I don't want to say I intervene. I cannot,
Okay, yeah, I'm using the.
Yeah, because I never want to be in a position because sometimes I might come up to somebody and say, "Look, Mary, I've just been watching you from afar. Let's say I'm coming to another barn and I happen to see what I see as a disaster waiting to happen, and I might go to Mary, look, I just passing by here, but I just want to let you know in watching you guys together, I'm really concerned about you getting on today." And the person say, "Well, you know, if I'm gonna get on him, let them know I'll duke it out or whatever, or you know, he needs to learn or something like this." And I'll say, you know, I'm really concerned because I think you're gonna have a problem. And then they go off and they ride and they get bucked off. Well, at least I see part of the objective is people will learn at the end of the day to trust their instincts, and sometimes they have to fall in order to honor it. So if I come by and I say, "Look, Mary, I think that you're not together yet," and the person is not open to listening to the why do you think that way, and they just go off, and something happens to them, they might come back later to me and say, "How did you know that?" But they needed to sometimes have that happen in order for them to realize that they too felt that as well. They just kind of plug through it. See,
Because we, as humans, I don't think we want to admit defeat.
Right, and where was it the other day? I learned this. I was on someone had sent this to me, and it was brilliant. It said, as you say, defeat, because I never lose, whether I win, or either I win or I learn. And you
Very
have to
good.
come with that to horses.
You
I
do.
think because I work with, stallion handling, troubled animals. So it's not just dressage, but I get all sorts of creatures, and if I allowed my, here I got it. If I allowed my ego to get involved in that, me being right, this commitment, I'm going to be right, I'm going to win.
You'd be fighting all day long.
I'd be a mediocre trainer. I'd be okay, but I don't want that, and I don't want that for people. I want them to be great. I want them to be great with their horse. I want them to be great riders. I want them to be great not with just that horse, but with other horses.
Right.
And I want them to be able to hear the animal, to hear them speak, so that they can have that relationship. And so mediocrity.
I'm glad you said that. Hear them speak. Because when I used to do things with mine and the young ones, and people go, "How come you not have him broke yet? How come you're not riding him yet?" Because I'm waiting for him to tell me he's ready.
Yes, there's a lot of that is what's involved, and that can be like just a whole other world. I'm right now writing my next book.
Are you? Oh.
Yeah, I just started a month ago, and I'm really excited about it. I have it's going to be really very different and novel, and what it is an invitation to people to connect to that part of the equation, whether you're a dressage rider, upper level, because I think there's such a disconnect. I think people feel like, well, I'm a competitive dressage rider, this doesn't apply to me, or I'm a Western reiner, we do things differently, or whatever.
You don't do things differently.
Yeah, there's people very sometimes entrenched in that. They don't realize that we're speaking the same language, and there's some fundamentals that transcend disciplines, and there's some things that transcend time. And I think that this next project I'm doing is trying to draw some of that information in to make it accessible to people, so that they have a little bit more joy in their relationship and some more concrete things about how to get to that place. We could be sometimes a little esoteric in talking about it, but there's some real practical things you can start doing. to start developing your instinct around your horse. And so you might have seen that as and having babies of your own, earlier in their lives. And there is you hear them whisper, but they do speak. And
They do. All animals talk.
Yes.
They all do. They communicate with us in some way or another.
They do.
Well, I'm a massage therapist by trade. Certified, do photonic
For
therapies.
horses,
and
Kathy?
horses and dogs.
Okay.
And a lot of energy work I do with them. And, my client will go to me, they'll watch me sometimes and say, why are you spending more time in this one area? I said, because that's where he needs it. That's where he's telling me to go.
Right.
Because sometimes I'm just, your eyes are closed. How can you see what you're doing? I said, well, he's telling me.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to him? I said, no, I'm not talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to him.
Right. I had an article that I just wrote. I wrote in Warmbloods today a while back, and it goes horse whispering versus horse listening. What's the difference? And I would think you nailed it on the head when you said listening. I think that if we can cultivate, first of all, you have to come into the equation believing that you can hear them. We are speaking. I see some of the Japanese and English words. There's a if you
It's a
read,
universal language.
it's a universal language of energy, and we talk about it in the books. But if you have to come believing that it exists, and one of the reasons we wrote the book is explaining to people from a scientific place why other people think it exists. So you have to come with that belief. A, B. Once you're in that place of faith, as they say, and you're a little bit open, then you do start to notice things a little bit, but it also involves quieting yourself. It involves being a little bit more mindful. Disciplines like meditation, prayer, yoga, Buddhism, whatever, any kind of prayer modality helps quiet your mind. So, and then you come and cultivate that, come to your horses with a sense of belief that can exist.
Mm-hmm.
You can start to invite those. The problem sometimes is that people come thinking that they hear things, and because they want to will, like, oh, my horse hates green colors. Was it your horse or is it you that hates green? We have to distinguish that. So I know they do, and I know I've seen miracles happen with animals, and not by running them around in a round pen. I mean, really explaining something to a creature on a very visceral, animalistic level. And I think that's everybody is able to achieve that, to have that connection with their horse. And
with any animal, really.
Yes.
You can do that even with their domesticated pets in the house.
In the house. I do, as a psychologist, if I had to, there's some, and I can't off the top of my head remember this, Kathy, but there's ways of assessing equine intelligence, too. Just like with dogs, there's different levels of an IQ, and so some horses have a higher emotional IQ and they can connect to you. Like my Marwari stallion that I have is special in that way. But dogs the same way, and humans, we have a variety of intelligence levels in that. So once you can assess where your horse is, you can pretty much kind of figure out how to get them and what's important to them. But it starts, I think, also from being that way with other human beings. Like I tell people, spend 1 hour, you'll see how difficult it is. 1 hour with someone, not saying a word, listening to them for a full hour. Empathic, compassion listening is so difficult. And so then we come to the horse, and because we spend board money, and because we have all these, and we come to them like, you should be a good boy today. Why? Because subconsciously we say, because we have all this money, we pay for you. But the horse doesn't know that. They don't realize that there's all this money involved. So there hence is the problem. Coming to them as a friend, coming to them with, what can I do for you? And coming to them believing that you can. If we really heard what they had to say, people would start crying. People don't, I think, want to, on some level, really hear what their partner has to say. And we silence each other in our own way, passive.
We do that with other people.
We do that with other people. And if people really heard what horses have to say, they have to change a lot of things in how they ride them and how they unite with them.
Interesting. It gets really deep.
This is...
But I know where you're coming from, and I can understand. what you're talking about and how we have to connect. But a lot of it does come from us.
Mm-hmm.
And from you saying that, I'm going, you know what? It's really hitting a nerve here.
Yeah,
Because,
you could be the best human being. In the modern they say, be all you can be. Be the best that you can be. Horses invite you to it. Put your ego aside and make that a meditative practice. I go into the barn. I work. That's my workspace, for example. But to me, walk into the indoor or walk into the store, and it's like I'm in a cathedral. I'm in church. It's not just I'm at the barn. This is a sacred space for me,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a place where I can elevate my consciousness, become a better human being. I learn discipline every day. Show up every day. I learned that from the young military.
Oh, yeah.
Just show up.
No sick days.
But if you are sicky and there's a sick day, honor that too.
Yeah.
But that sounds so good. That's beautiful classical music. One of the other things we have at our barn that we do is we don't have music. We don't have like a lot of the chatter. Because how can you really hear something when there's all this noise,
You
like
can't.
static? And believe me, when you have a space that quiet, you hear all sorts of things. It's natural. You don't even have to work at it. All of a sudden, you start to realize things. Before you know, you say, well, I kind of feel like that horse needs extra, something's going on with his leg. And before you know it, there's an abscess. Or you kind of feel like that horse has a tummy ache. And, but by silencing your environment a little bit, it helps to access a little bit of the communication that's happening.
You're right. Yeah, I never had a radio in my barn either. For some
Yeah.
reason, just never. I've been in barns where they've had them,
Mm-hmm.
and the kids were just playing around. The grooms were singing and doing whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I never had one in mine. Occasionally, if they were stuck in their stalls for a few days, really bad weather, I would play some very soft classical music
Classical
during the
music.
night. At night,
Right.
when I was not around, it was. I don't know. I thought it just helped to soothe them a little bit. It's
Mhm.
just something for them to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I'm talking about is because there's been so many studies too, like even with certain types of music, in the way that it affects the growth of even plants. Some plants do well with this music. And
I've read some of those studies. I
And
had
it-
to in school.
and all that I think is true. During the day though, because some of the things that are obnoxious, there's certain frequencies, musical frequencies that cantankerous to, and they've done a lot of research around the effects of the heart rate on animals. For example, certain music types or whatever it may be. I just found that for me, in what I do, it's helpful to
Just be quiet.
just quiet myself and to trust that with each other, when there's not any ambient noise, they figure it out. They talk to each other, they comfort each other. They don't need that. In the wild, they don't have classical music.
No.
If I've done my job right in creating an environment for them at the barn that there's peace and tranquility, there's nothing to. I don't need to do anything to de-stress them. Their environment is already a peaceful place. See, and there has to be that a commitment to that, creating a space of what can I do for you? Are you okay? So that's part of the kind of daily communion that helps cultivate that hearing, listening.
Where were you
part.
when I was younger?
Be whipping you into shape, Kathy.
Oh, no, you probably wouldn't be. You would be,
You'd be
discussing things with me, but I had one trainer that was a Native American, and he would sit there and go, "Can you hear your horse talking to you right now?
Yeah.
What went on with you last night? What's wrong with you today? Your horse doesn't want to be near you. You're throwing off some energy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I had an argument last night, and I guess I held it all."
They tell on you.
Oh,
They
gosh,
do.
they do, don't they?
Yeah.
Before
Can't
I
hide.
skip, we're going to just kind of go off track here for a second, because I'm going to forget, and I know Christina also asked me and told me that you were a partner of hers over at Spring Rains of Life. And you are part of the clinical section, or part. Tell me what you do over there and how has that affected you, and what does it mean to you? Has it changed your life in any way, and how do you see the differences with the people that you work with in horses?
Yes. Well, I have to say, I'm very proud of the work that Christiana has
She does
now.
amazing work.
She
Yeah.
she has an because I'm a co-founder of the Spring Rains of Hope, which is more the LLC, the business part of it. So we created it sitting on my couch, and then from there, I mean now I function more as a consultant for her for the nonprofit side, which is
Okay.
Spring Rains of Life. So the Spring Rains of Hope, Spring Rains of Life is the nonprofit. So I've watched her build her passion and create the nonprofit sector as kind of she's moved on. Obviously, my training work in traveling took me out of the partnership, but I'm still a consultant. I have to say that short of the fact that she does amazing work with, I mean, gosh, the veterans projects she's done, I'm involved in that. Amazing work, life-changing, with the children, inner city children, problems that both in children and adults, psychological, emotional, physical. I think just across the board, the commitment to that is, and to stay in a business like that with the overhead that's involved, you have to be committed to it. So I'm really, really proud of her. And for me personally, on a personal level, any partnership is difficult. I think starting a business with someone, starting a relationship with someone has always its inevitable challenges.
Always.
And I'm very proud that I mean we put our money where our mouth is, because in that despite those challenges, Christiana and I have remained through all of the years and building things and the disagreements and the moving in different directions, solid friends and colleagues that have mutual respect for each other.
That's
and
wonderful.
support that. So I think that again, it goes back to you have to cultivate being a better human because it makes you more authentic in your work. To me, I'm very proud of that. The fact that here we are as two adult women in the horse world, and we have support in each other in what we're doing. And I'm very proud of the fact that the thousands of people she's touching, for me personally, being part of the session. See, as a trainer, people come to me because they have horses rearing, or they're bucking, or they want to perfect their piaffe, or they're looking to make their horse jump better, or whatever it is these goals are maybe. At the core of it for me, it's how do I make the horse more accessible? How can I get the horse to speak and tell me what he wants, where he wants to be? Is he comfortable? You see that a lot in the equine facilitated work because I don't have an agenda. They are at their whim to move away.
Right.
So you really, you're kind of, I don't know how to say this, I'm not the most articulate being in the world, I have to say, but without the agenda in it, you can really honor them in their fullness. So when I go then back to my training work, I'm a lot, maybe not as, I won't jump to a conclusion around something. It's made me a lot more objective. I don't none of the animal, what is it, anthropomorphism. As a result of that work, my potential to anthropomorphize things is less. I'm much more objective, approaching a problem like, well, what the horse is scratching the other horse's butt. Well, what? Well, it could be, well, they like each other. It could be that they had a scratch, and in other words, instead of jumping to my own personal projections, that kind of work has made me a lot more objective,
Right.
and a little bit more open to then hearing things instead of putting my own ego and projections on top of it. So it's really trained me, my brain, basically, that the training of Igala. I recommend it to anybody, even if you're not, say, interested in that work. Igala has some level 1 trainings that they have for equine peoples. Like most people can qualify as what they call an ES, equine specialist, if you run a barn, if you're a trainer. I say take the training because it'll help you be able to organize information around horses a little bit more objective, and that helps kind of train you to be a little bit not invested in an outcome, I'd say. So that's one way that it's helped me. I think that, but the big thing for me has been the relationship that I've been able to with another human being. Look, we created something together. Uh, Partnerships are inevitably difficult. People want to take ownership of things. I love that if I can walk into a relationship, a business relationship with people, and honor both our strengths and weaknesses, and at the end of the day, how do I take that then to be a better partner for my horse? So I'm proud of that, really proud of that.
It's an interesting way that you do that. I never thought of of changing the way I am with people in order to better my relationship with my animals.
Yeah. Well, see, the part of it too is it's I'm a twin. I have a twin sister. So we were raised as children, and not well, we didn't speak very good English. So when we came here, we spoke Greek, and we even had our own language. So it was kind of a playing in a different other world with someone who we could play around with these ideas. So partnership has never been a difficult piece for me. Understanding the importance and the value of that. Well, horses are herd members. They're herd
Right.
animals, and no one's more important than the other person. I think that really everybody has a place in that herd, and partnerships.
Oh, the pecking order, yes.
And sometimes that pecking order changes and shifts, but you value and see the talent of the other person and appreciate them in their fullness. And so then you come to your horse, and the mindset is always, like somebody said to me the other day, well, I want to work on my fear. I have, as a rider, I'm fearful. And I say, well, let's work on you being more confident. But say, yes, but I have all this fear, and I read this article about how we can combat our fear. And I said, well, I don't want to approach it. Like, see, as I'm a certified hypnotist, as a psychologist, one of the things I got certified earlier on my training is hypnosis. So if somebody had, say, a smoking problem, we wouldn't target stop smoking. We'd think of all the things that would increase their health habits, maybe drink more water, maybe exercise more. And as a result of increasing those behaviors, you invariably decrease the smoking. You have to think of horses kind of, I think, in that way, not about stopping a behavior, but how do you improve something? How do you increase the likelihood of? How can you enhance that in relationship? So it's a little bit of a paradigm shift. But that means more work for us, because we love
Right.
to be in the poor me,
Yeah,
me. I'm saying
my
this,
horse
am
is
I
being
awful or
bad
what? I'm so
today.
terrible.
It's all my horse's
Horse's
fault.
fault.
I didn't do anything wrong.
Yes. I say it's all my fault. I did everything wrong. And then you somewhere the correct answer is somewhere in the middle. It's not all your fault, but it's not all their fault. It's somewhere in the middle, just as in anything in life.
Right. Yeah. Wow, you're really opening my eyes a lot more. I really wish I had met you a long time ago before I even got into my breeding stint. But I had problems like everybody else with the babies. They are unpredictable.
They are unpredictable, and they have, babies are special because, I have a lot. Every year I usually get some horses. I am, I guess, the head trainer for the patron of very rare breed, the Marwari horses. So as a result of working with some of those babies too, which are kind of unique or a little different, you can see how their early life can really impress on them, how they experience humans, And one of the things I think people would do well with is some less is more with babies, and that's I can do a whole thing on that. But in Europe, for example, they do a lot of letting them kind of be for the early years.
Be a
And
baby.
be a
Be
baby.
a horse. Go out and have fun.
Short of doing the farrier and plucking them
Right.
out for doing things, and maybe the early desensitizing, where they're born, somebody's touching them. Sometimes not even that, but just like very minimal handling until they're about 2 or 3. You see a lot of the horses will explain to horses that just the relationship with other horses will minimize half the problems I think people have with their early toddlers. So for example, I sometimes get called in to help with a problem horse, not so much here like locally, but when I travel for clinics or when I go to Spain, people come with an issue and I'll say to them, well, do you have a good mare on the property? Okay, let's give this 2 or 3 days. We'll put this little boy with a couple of mares and 2 or 3 geldings, and they'll solve the problem better than I can. But it's knowing how to, plan that out. So a lot of the early handling, I think, becomes very traumatic for people and the horse when it shouldn't necessarily have to be. So, I mean,
I was lucky. I had a good mare.
She knew how to put
And
everything in place.
she knew how to handle her own offspring. And she knew she would actually block, like if the vet came. You know, they have to get their shots, like, you know, everybody else. And they get their exams, like everybody else.
Yeah.
And, you know, babies are going, no, 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 no. My mare would actually block her baby and stand and push her. And if she moved, she would move. So she
She's
was
helping
trying
you
to
out?
tell her. She would help me out. She was excellent. She was a good girl.
Please
we-
help this human. She's trying to help you.
I think she was trying to tell her that it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay to be touched. It's okay to, you know, even though, yes, a shot hurts,
Mhm.
it's okay to get them.
Mhm.
It's okay to be handled a little bit. It's okay. I mean, they weren't, when my farrier would come and do my mare, you know, I'd say, hey, show her
Help
some
me out.
tools.
Yeah,
Show her
like,
some
help me
tools.
out.
You know, just show her some, you know, some things. And I would hold the baby
Mhm.
and let her watch her mom get worked on.
Yeah.
I think they can learn a
By
lot just by watching.
each other. Absolutely. That's another thing I don't see too much. Like if I have again with the Marwaris more so, when I get them.
We want to talk about
yeah,
those horses. They sound amazing.
They're very interesting. I learn a lot from them. But I always would, in the beginning, will have, say, an older stallion that I'm working. He knows his things. I'll bring a younger stallion and work them together so that they watch each other and they know it's okay. Like what I'm asking him, he seems okay with it. Therefore, you'll be okay with it. It's a lot. Things are much easier that way. But again, you have to come from the place that you know that mare is, say, helping that folk. She's helping. She's your partner in crime. She's your colleague. She's trying to help the situation. If you come from that place, you can elicit their help much more. You see it like when, well, there's so many examples of it, but part of it is faith that exists at the core of it.
Yeah, and people have to recognize it,
Yes.
which is part of the problem. Some people don't recognize that the mare or another horse is trying to help another horse help you.
Yeah. Or the
And-
biggest one, Kathy, now that, before I forget, the biggest one, oh, I can't even, where do I go? The biggest one is like a horse, and I'm sure as a massage professional, you know this, you've seen this. A horse will be sore or uncomfortable. You put them on the crosses, and you start to touch an area, and they'll start to move around, or they'll start to dance in the cross ties, and people be like, stop it, stop that, stop that, stand still, stand
No,
still.
they're telling me.
You just silence that animal. It's I can't tell you how our need to have they're not motorcycles, they're not machines, they have feelings, and they're trying to show you. So sometimes I'll go someplace and I'll make a miracle happen. The horse will stand perfectly still and be like, well, how did you do it? Because I'm seeing, they're telling you all the time. See, but they don't have hands, so they're going to try to block you with their face. They're going to try to, in whatever way, to move away from that pressure that's uncomfortable. And we see that as a misbehaving. Why isn't that horse doing what I want? Stand still. And if you just miss the opportunity, a major opportunity, to find out who he is.
I think people think that animals are puppets on a string, and that we get to pull all the strings all the time, and they react the way they're supposed to react all the time, and they don't.
Mm-mm.
They have a mind.
They
have a brain. They have a brain. God, get it together tonight. But they do think.
They do.
And they are creative.
They are creative and industrious. I have sat on animals in the past, like when they realize you hear, they start like piaf passaging, like their joy comes out. Like when they realize you're
you
listening.
can see it.
Yeah.
You can see it.
And that's when I say to people, work from this place, dedicate yourself to operating from this place, and I promise you, things like their gaits will improve. You'll go from a 5 to a 7 gait. And you don't have to go through the mechanisms of doing anything mechanically, meaning on the flat, doing exercises. Sometimes they'll offer it to you simply because they know that you're listening. And I try to explain this to people, like it's not writing, and the joy in writing is not that difficult. If you come from a place of listening, they will offer you these things. It's literally offerings that they'll give you to show their joy. And so I've sat on animals that I mean, it's like miracle after miracle. Horses will do things or offer things that the owners like, I've never seen a horse look like that, or I've never seen that animal express himself like this. And all I can tell you is that if it starts with, if you're standing and they're on the cross ties, if you're putting too much pressure, move away. Honor that. They're trying to tell you something. And then they realize, oh, she hears me. Oh,
Yeah.
she
Oh,
hears me.
yeah.
Uh-oh.
I think a lot of people, from what I found, even with my students years ago, were, I'm the rider.
Yeah.
And I keep telling them, you're a partner.
Partner. We're lucky, Kathy, to sit on their backs.
Yeah.
We are, every
They
time.
allow us. I mean, these animals could basically kill us in a heartbeat if they wanted to.
Absolutely.
And they
we are
choose
lucky
not to.
We are lucky to sit on their backs. I feel honored when every horse I see, whether it's a zebra or a mule. Sometimes we had a few years ago, I had a student who had these fantastic mules, or it could be a Grand Prix horse. Anything I'm sitting on, the minute I put my stirrup, I say thank you. Thank you for letting me. It starts with just gratitude. Thank you for letting me sit on you. How beautiful you are. To me, I feel like I'm sitting on a king's mount. And I see them that way. Like even if I have a horse that comes into training, maybe they need rehabilitation. I have a mare right now who has a suspensory issue of bringing her back as a jumper into a more of a dressage career. And I don't see them maybe as they are. I see them as this beautiful, how they're going to be in a few months, physically and mentally available, alive, alert. But a lot of times, saying that you're talking about lunge work, part of the trouble is as the horse is on the lunge, expressing themselves, maybe they're leaping, maybe they're bucking. We don't want to see that. We get scared of it. And it starts from saying, like watching that, and instead of saying, oh my God, knowing that you can stop at any minute, the minute you can whistle it, but seeing that exuberance as just that, the expression of who they are, that's wonderful, that my horse can express himself, that he knows I can not be scared of that I allow that on the lunge line. Then when I get on top of him, he's going to show me who he is. I want that. I want to invite that into my relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
But sometimes we don't want to see each other. We don't really want to know the truth about each other sometimes.
That's true. Yeah, that is definitely true. Before we go into our second hour, tell us how we can contact you. If someone's interested in coming to your farm to look things over, to talk to you about maybe becoming a student or a client or looking for a horse, how can they contact you?
They can email me or call me at my number. Sometimes I won't answer it right away. I'm either with a horse or someone, but it's 732-921-0565, and then I have a website. It's just my name, www.mariakatsamannis.com, or through Facebook. We have a farm Facebook account. It's Amwell Ridge Farm right in Ringgold, New Jersey. I always invite people from the community at large to come and contact us if you're interested in meeting my Marwari horses, because as a way of just engaging the public about equine wellness, fair training tactics for animals in general, not just horses, but compassionate training for specifically for horses. I have my Marwari stallion and another one that's with us, but I invite the public to come visit them. A, it's good for him too, to socialize, but B, when people really realize being with them, the specialness of that and the history around that, I invite people to come see him, experience something that rare, something that unique, and maybe even people that are been away from riding for a long time, maybe that they can connect to something through that, you see.
Right.
And for horse people, just the chance to be able to learn a little bit about horses outside of the United States. We don't know.
We don't.
I've traveled all over, and you see how people train from North Africa to the hills in Greece, to people that depended on animals for centuries. And so these horses are kind of connected to horses of the antiquities. So I tell people, come meet them, because you probably won't ever see one again.
Probably not. I have never heard of this particular breed that you have on your farm right now.
Yeah, you have to come, Kathy. It's very,
you have to. Well, tell us about their background and where they come from, and how he's so special, because apparently your face lights up in
Yeah,
your
it
eye
is
when
a-
you talk about them. So there's something special about this horse
I have
or
to
this
say,
breed.
when I first of all, when they're known, the Marwari horses are the western. If you think of India, it's the western province of India. It's
Okay.
nearest to Pakistan, the border of Pakistan. These are very arid lands. So if you kind of travel through time with
So
them
they're
for a
like a
little bit,
desert horse,
it's a desert
basically.
horse. And they are known. They're called the heart-shaped eared horses of India. So their ears kind of form in a heart shape. If you go on my website,
Okay.
you'll see, if there's a link to Marwari stallion, you'll see a picture of it. If you go on the internet, you'll see many of them. But their ears form like a heart. And when they the ear turns backwards, it's in the shape of a Celtic harp. So they literally are kind of, when you first see them, it's very unique. When I first saw them, I thought they looked like maybe a giraffe or some kind of a mythical creature, because they don't quite look like a horse. And they have a very unique whinny, like it's like a whinny with an accent. And so
Okay.
their smell is kind of different too. Like every horse has a certain odor.
Right.
It's kind of a little spicy. But they are, I think, most of our breeds in today's day are kind of man-made. You know, thoroughbred being one of the first ones that
Mhm.
we thoroughly bred. You know, our warm bloods were bred for a specific task. Quarter horses, a specific
Again,
thing.
yes, specific things.
The Marwari horse is a little different in that it's formed by the desert and it's literally its environment. The sands blowing through, their ears, in order to protect from the sand, had to develop in such a way so that the sand didn't
didn't get-
accumulate in there. So they're kind of that's part
How
of the
nature
thing.
takes care of everything, really.
Yeah. My horse is he almost has, the way the hair grows on his hoof, it's like an ancient throwback to some Mongolian horse. If you see the hoof, that's very interesting. That genetically, so they're not quite sure genetically where they come from. They say that the Marwar horse is from, say, some kind of like ancient ponies. Other people say that ships that kind of crashed off the coast of India, a lot of Arab blood mixed in. We know that during the British occupation of India, there was some thoroughbred mixed in there now, and there were great efforts to breed back the original kind of Marwari horse, which was kind of it almost looks like a Lusitano but with heart-shaped ears. So the heart-shaped eared horses of India, you know, me being a heart rate variability specialist, kind of was a funny connection how we connected. But the big thing about the Marwari horses is that they are the rarest horse in the world. The Indian government has banned the export of these horses, so you can't buy them really. There's only about 24 of them outside of India, and there's about 800 of them, I believe, in India. But the conditions in India, the care, many of them die, for example, of sand colic and poor breeding, like not considering the genetic mutations or something.
Right, right.
So not the best care there, and so there's the ones that are in there are kind of, you know, not that many, let alone the ones outside. So when I got connected with the patron of the breed, Francesca Kelly, a British woman who has kind of single-handedly took on the rescue of these, along with her partner Bani, who's a Rajput, and Rajasthan, the province of India next to to Pakistan. The Rajasthanis were kind of descendants of the Maharaja, which were I guess, the warriors of that time. So the Marwari horse was to be ridden only by nobility. They were the
Okay.
war horses of India, just like we have the Lipizzaner as a war horse. These were the eastern war horses. In fact, history says that Alexander the Great, he conquered all the way, he pushed all the way to almost India, and he lost. You know, the great tale of Bucephalus, his relationship with his own horse. I think Bucephalus died in what is now Georgia, and they named a city called Bucephalia in honor of him. He fell in Bucephalia. Georgia. But basically, they say that Alexander the Great lost because the Indian horses were so agile. The horses of the Eastern were so agile. So, God knows, but the centuries of basically desert breeding and minimal human intervention makes them. Someone told me a while back they are closer to like a wild horse than,
Okay.
and even our wild horses here, the Mustang. There's more domestication in that.
Than there are in this.
Yes.
Yeah. And domestication does change them.
It does.
It
change
changes
them.
their coat, their body type. I know domestication can change, genetically change.
Genetically change them, and so as a result of because when I first got them, I have to say, it really was a lot of the tactics that might have used as a trainer early on were not going to work here. It was like sitting on dynamite, so they taught me a lot about being really, quiet on a different level. They taught me a lot about if I believed the horses could speak, could understand what we were saying, I really got it with these horses because they're just we're on a little bit of a different level. I know in India they do a lot of submitting them, breaking them. And I always like to say, I start my horses, I don't break my horses.
Yeah, I don't like the word break. I usually say first rides, but...
Yeah, first rides. Yeah, but like first day of school.
Exactly. It's,
like
new.
day of
They're
school.
learning. It's a learning process.
We're learning together. And I learned a lot about being like just on a different level with them.
Because I always said, we're not breaking their spirit.
No, I want their spirit, and
But we want to train them.
You have to understand that there are some rules and regulations to live in this environment. If I had it my way, I'd be zooming my car at 90 miles an hour in Flemington. But we can't do those things. No. And that's, I think that with the Marwari horses also, because of that, I think, level of wildness, I just want to say, that I came to respect and leave that alone. I learned to leave that alone and that it's okay. And as a result of that, this whole other world opened up around them for me.
That's amazing. So now, do you ride him, or is he? You do.
Yes. I say my horse. His full name is Badorsha, which means in Hindi, a brave one. Which is, for anyone that knows me or knows him, I'm not the bravest soul in the world. I make it a constant discipline to try to be brave in everything in life. But gosh, I wouldn't say I wouldn't describe myself as that. And neither was he. He didn't arrive as a brave horse. He was probably the one that I would sit in the pasture for hours just to get him to come near. He'd be the one running around in terror, and you can't stop him. He'd be the one with the dead eye when he came. So we learned together. He makes me a braver person because he's my magic horse. If he compels me to be what I want him to be, which is braver, confident, assured, and the more I will that for myself, the more I will that for him, we grow together. So I started him myself, and he is now my riding partner. Hopefully, we're destined to be at WEG, the next World Equestrian Games, as an exhibition.
So that would be amazing.
And on occasion, if I have somebody who's really... See, if you were a kid at the barn and I was your teacher, you'd be... On occasion, if I have somebody really dedicated and they're really committed to understanding these things, I start them on the long lines. And they say to me, Maria, I want to be the best I can be. I say, okay. One of the horses I have them work with is my stallion. Once they have some lessons with him, just on the long lines, then you start to understand a lot of things that way. So that when you go to your riding, you start to go to a different level.
Interesting. Wow. Oh, I have to see this. This stallion, he sounds amazing. I've never seen one.
Okay, it's so cute. And he was so shy, Kathy. Oh my God. He was so shy and so timid. And now the more I bring people to him, I tell him, Baba. I call him Baba. It's his barn name. Because you can't possibly say Badosha every time. I said, Baba, I bought you a friend. And people come and he'll like salute people. He knows jambette. And he'll salute you. And he just has, come right up to people. And that's another thing. When the 4-H, the Hunterton 4-H girls came to visit us one year, and one of the things I try to explain to people is that these are stallions, but you'd never know it. They're very, very kind, but I respect that they're stallions, so I'm very considerate of what that means in terms of the layout of the space and but who they are. But they're very tribal. You feel their presence in the barn. There's a special energy and protection that they do offer. If something's wrong in the farm, maybe there's a horse that's not feeling well, maybe a horse has broken through a fence and they're roaming around, my stallion will call out, will tell me something's happening. They're very aware of their space, but they'd never disrespect you. I put little kids in the stalls and they groom them. You'd never know that they're stallions. So that early life learning together, like, hey, these are the rules and regulations, then it removes that thing that bothered me as a child, seeing people yanking with chains over their noses or whipping or spurs or anything, like anything that would disrespect the fact that they are a sentient being, and that if you ask, you might just get what you're looking for. And so as stallions in particular, educating people around proper stallion handling, so that because stallions and mares, I do believe, because of the extra hormones, we all know that.
Yes.
Extra hormones.
I love mares. They're my favorite.
They have that kind of different, like, hyper alertness, a little special something or other, and you don't want to squash that by then having to, inevitably in a relationship, reprimand them, correct them, put them in the place. So that's why sometimes I tell the public, please come visit my stallion. Whether you're a horse rider or not, because you'll have a respect or a better understanding, more educated idea of what a stallion is, not this fear that sometimes we have around them as this kind of, we isolate. Like my stallions, they're in paddocks side by side. They have my particular stallions with his buddy, Chevy, Allison Baskin, a woman that works with me, like assistant trainer. Her horse is in the paddock with him. They have friends, they're socialized. And we like all our horses to have a community of other horses, not isolated. And
isolation's no good for anybody.
Yeah.
Not for people, animals. It's just not good. They need that interaction.
They do. And I think it makes them happier to then be with you. So, there's a time with me that they're doing more of like gymnastic work, like their training work, flat work. So they have their time with me, they have their time with their buddies, they have their sleep time. We respect their time for things. And so, of course, that creates a better partnership. They know their work. They know when I put the tack on, it means it's work, whether there's a mare around or anything, their job. And they, if I've done my work correctly, they would enjoy it. Like you going to the gym. You don't want to go, but when you get there and after you do your workout, you kind of feel better. So if I've done my job correctly, they should be feeling better after it, maybe looking forward to our time against them. So that's a big part of the equation for my that they've taught me that more, the stallions, the Marwari in particular. It's the wild part that people used to get really worried about, and I've realized I can't control, I have no control over anything, really, at the end of the day. What makes me think that I'm going to control this animal that's got that wild in him? I'm going to respect him, and I'm going to find a way that we can be co-partners. I can't even say I own him. I say like I'm his custodian, maybe at best. I think he's wiser than I am.
My mother always said that we were the horse's servants.
Yeah. Okay, I know they're training me every day. There's one at the barn. I think he has me at his beck and call all the time.
But it's funny, we were their servants, or we still are. Unfortunately, I don't have any right now, but in time again.
We might change that.
Well, I have home issues, at the moment, so my time is kind of limited between work and that, and off the air, I'll talk to you about that and let you. But yeah, I would definitely, and I think my time off right now is God telling me, think about what you want to do next. Yeah. Because I did
or maybe
everything.
How to do it differently.
And I was toying with either going back to Western, but then there's nothing I can't do anything around here. I have to go back to Pennsylvania. I lived in Michigan for a while because there was a lot of it out there. But there's nothing in New Jersey, really. Although, yes, there is now. She was a guest a few weeks ago. There's barrel racing and reining down in southern Jersey, which is great. They've been here not too long, but they're now trying to bring the Western back in to New Jersey.
Like upper New Jersey. We have at our barn, we have a woman we have 2 Western saddles in our barn, and everybody says, "Whoa, you're a dressage," and this particular young woman is so cute because she says, Maria, it's at the end of the day, it's how you work your horse, whether you're a reiner or
It
you're
doesn't
harness.
matter.
Yeah, if you have a good
Yeah.
foundation, you have a good foundation, and your horse can be able has the top line, the supportive muscle, they can do anything.
Absolutely.
And barrel racing, or as long as I think a lot of times what I see is horses being asked to do things that they're physically not ready for, and people are not being vicious or mean or abusive anyway. They just don't know. They don't know what readiness means. They don't know what kind of preparation the horse needs. Sometimes, because everyone around you is doing it that same way, you think that's correct. And so one of the things about just traveling the country with this book and promoting it,
We're going to talk a little bit more about this book too, and what's in it, and where they can purchase it. If they have to go through you, or it's in a bookstore,
Sure.
or Amazon. Who knows where they are?
But one of the things is just telling people, gosh, guys, a lot of these principles are not new. I'm not pitching a technique. I'm more advocating for philosophy, because the things to do to help prepare a horse, to assess their readiness, that's all been solved by our ancestors, people that needed the horse.
Thousands of years ago.
And they needed the horse for transportation. So they needed a horse that wasn't going to go lame. Their survival depended on it. So yes, it's like they're the Mercedes-Benz figured out the mechanics of all this, the gymnastics of developing a horse. All that has already been figured out. Somehow, that's one of the problems. I see people asking horses things to do. And so then, of course, with that comes all the resistances around when a horse can't do it. He's going to do all the resistances that we identify as problems, So I have a clinic coming up, by the way, in March.
Let me know when. I would love to come.
And we do that. I tell people, come for the day and tell me what your problem is, whatever it is. If you're a Western person, if you're a jumper, the horse is not, come in and let's look at where your horse's physicality is, and what are some of the resistances that are getting in the way of you getting to the next level. But just a little education sometimes helps open up a
so
door.
much so. Why do you think we've changed from our ancestors to today?
Oh, great question, Kathy. Not that all the other questions weren't, but it's a great question. And I think part and parcel, look, at the end of the day, European equestrian tradition, where it evolved it out of the military primarily, there was a sector always, even within the military, that was more of the art, the refinement. These were the geniuses that developed and refined the skills. And in the circus, a lot of times you found in traveling circuses in Europe, a lot of the great genius masters of equestrian art, as you want to say it. But what happened was, as we moved this colonization of Australia, colonization of the United States meant, people don't realize this, that United States had at one time one of the best militaries in the world. Fort Riley was one of the best military equestrian, the cavalries in the world, because around Benjamin Franklin's time, when we were exporting a lot of French, our cavalry was based out of the French cavalry, the equivalent of today's Somme. So we exported a lot of their people, came here and set up our own cavalry based on that. So a lot of the techniques, for example, Boucher flexions, today you see as lateral bending in the cowboy world, That's why I laugh when I hear natural horsemanship, because it's guys meet other trainers, and like I met a guy in Spain from North Africa. He's starting horses in 2 seconds. These colts are coming out of a trailer. They've been fresh with urine and strangly manes right off the Pyrenees, and he's in a round pen, square pen, and putting these animals under saddle in 2 seconds. Kindly, like gentle, but like, so this has been in existence for years. What happened was, when we exported things, we had to train these guys very quickly how to go from point A to point B on a horse. Many of them, they just soldiers that needing to go to Texas and fight the Mexicans or go out to kill the Indians. So they needed to quickly train these guys to go, stop, go, point A to point B. So the cavalry evolved to be more of a functional thing. So then to go right, you pull to the right rein. To go left, you pull to the left. But that's not really, I say dressage, you're using your seat, the lightest that you can, slight hands, no pulling, no pushing. All that was already kind of figured out long before, but because we needed now to train these basically monkeys to sit on a horse and travel we simplified it. So then these guys went out west, fought the Indians, and then decided, looked around and said, gosh, you know what, I think I want to settle here. So they would stay there, and then their objective was to start horses so they can again use them on the farm and function. And it became not refinement, but speed of task. So it became more of a
rodeo.
Like how quick can you get this job done? Well, I got that horse broken one day, and I got that. So that whole quick fix, fast food, fast everything became a way of kind of functioning out in those environments, because for sheer need, they needed to start horses quickly so they needed to start a horse that they break them really, and then have that animal riding on the frontier with cattle. And then you had some horsemen out there who started to realize, hey, we don't need to be this brutal, some Tom Dorrance and like a lot of the folks that really had figured it out that it can be better than that. But a lot of the parallels, round pens, in Europe they use square pens, lateral bending and all that was Boucher. All these were, I think, precursors, remnants from the French school that our cavalry.
And they just took shortcuts.
Yeah,
many shortcuts.
They adapted it for their needs. So it's nothing. What I find interesting is that people trying to take ownership of things that have existed through time, have been here with us for centuries. We've just adapted it differently and put a different name on essentially some of the parallels of the identical things, if that makes any sense.
It does make a lot of sense. But I think that's the American people. Everything is a shortcut.
Yeah, fast and not that that can't be effective. I've seen people very kindly be able to do that, and certainly, in Europe, it's not uncommon to see some of these large stud farms. You have a horse that day started, and by the afternoon they're showing or they're jumping. There's no. I'm not putting a how do you say? I'm not putting a bad label on that.
Right.
Because I do believe that sometimes a horse is that willing, is that their concentration is really evolved. They might be if you meet the horse that you have, some horses do need at that time. They're not mature yet. They can't focus enough yet. They don't have the ability to retain information. They might be anxious and not learning their lessons. While other horses, boom, they pick it up rather quickly, and you can move along a little faster. So.
And that's all in learning how to read your horse.
Yes, learning how to read.
And you teach your students how to read their horse. Do you teach them how to read themselves as well, how to assess themselves before they actually get into their horse?
Kathy, one of the things that my father, my parents, they struggle because they, here they have a daughter. I was at a major medical school. I was a rising star in research, and here I kept, the horses were always kind of going on. I was always doing something with horses, and they said to me, well, don't you miss the clinical work? Don't you miss working with people, like just having a clinical practice of some? Not that I ever had, only towards the end of my really working at the university department that I have, say, one-on-one clinical practice through the medical school. But they asked me, well, don't you miss that? And I say, gosh, I have more time with humans talking about stuff that happens with than I ever did as a strictly functioning as a psychologist in a kind of medical world. I think it's all intertwined. You are your horse. The horse you have today is a reflection of what you need and where you are. And so invariably, it's a kind of a different form of psychotherapy, I suppose.
I agree. I believe that. I know there are a lot of people that either have a horse or a dog, and it's like their therapy. Mm-hmm. It's cheaper than sitting in an office once a week, and it's more fun, and you do learn a lot about yourself.
But a lot of people, it goes back to that, so you might see it that way. Many people I run across don't see their horse as an invitation to become a better person. They see the horse as, I'm paying for you. I paid. You're a $50,000 horse. What are you going to do for me? When are you going to put out for me? They don't see this as, you know what? This is a challenge. How can I be better for my horse? How can I be better for humans? And
So
I tell
that's
you,
what we all need to learn more about in this country is what your horse needs. Listen to him.
hmm
Listen to what he needs before what you need, and then you work together.
yes. And I tell people, I promise you that'll just being open to that, just being making that paradigm shift will take you from okay to great.
Oh,
And the day when I see that with people that I'm working with, that they go to that place, that viscerally makes me. If I die tomorrow, I feel like I've accomplished something. Because that means that the welfare of the horse continues to improve.
right.
And I feel like my goal and my mission in life is to be able to just get that message to some people that exists and explain to them why and put them in situations where they can see it for themselves. It's one thing for me to tell you about it. It's a different thing if I can put you in a place where then you see it for yourself. And then you realize, well, I don't want to go back to kind of the way it was before, and I want to grow it. Not only with this horse, but I can do that with another horse.
And
Yeah.
not only their horses, but their home pets as well.
hmm
I think that's why a lot of our domesticated in-home pets wind up in shelters.
Yeah.
And a lot of horses are given away or
Mhm.
sold or sent to
Mhm.
where places I don't want to talk about because they don't get along with them.
Yeah.
And do you consider that a personality conflict, or is it just that the people aren't listening to their horse talk?
Well, sometimes, one of the things, people come to me sometimes because they come to a clinic because they're at the brink of selling an animal. They're not sure where to go. They're not sure if it's a good match. And so one of the things is I have to figure out is this a mismatch? Sometimes when we get into a relationship, we think this is the love of your life, and you realize, that there's a lot of things that these two people should not be together right now, and there's some really good reasons why. Sometimes people should not be with certain horses. It's a rare thing, but I've been able to tell some folks this is not the right horse for you. This horse would flourish in a different way. You're not ready for the situation yet. You need something a little bit more, maybe not as complicated. So sometimes it's a mismatch, but I admire people that can be open to the fact that and come for help and say, I don't know what to do with this horse, versus doing a knee-jerk reaction and chucking an animal away without really considering where it's going.
Right.
So I think when a person realizes they're frustrated, they're not really connecting, and they come and say, they can be humble enough to say, I'm not sure where to go with this horse, but I really don't want it. At least they get a chance to see if that's true. Sometimes, we're scared of stepping into something, but we don't realize we do actually have the skills and the aptitude to be in it, and you just need someone to walk you through it. But some people, they don't have the finances. Things, gosh, 3 years ago, what a mess a lot of people were in. It's gotten a little better, but the realities of our finances sometimes mean that we have to part with a lot of things, one of them being what may be considered a luxury in our life, which is our pet, our horse, which is for many people a real visceral, it's a really difficult place to be.
Yes,
So
it is.
I get it, I understand that, but I think that when people just, their knee-jerk reaction is to get rid of something, they really miss an opportunity to learn something about themselves and say, 9 out of 10 times it's something that could have been worked through. Something that the person would have kind of benefited, even temporarily, like work through it, then decide to sell the animal, and then move on to
Right.
something else, because there was a learning there that would have elevated your horsemanship.
That's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people would just say, no, sell your horse. A lot of trainers would just say, oh, no, that one's not for you. You can't hit. No, you're fighting. Now, do you believe that there are personalities that do not get along between horses and people?
Yeah, I do. I think sometimes people are not ready for certain horses. That's why I say, like,
yeah, but they're not ready.
they're not ready for a certain horse, and that's why I say, even in that relationship, it could be, okay, well, let's look at the situation, and at least in peeling away the fact that they're not ready, they could still learn some skills,
Okay.
and then say, you know what, I don't think this is the right horse for me. And then, if they decide to sell the animal, and then move on to something else, because there was a learning there that would have made elevated your horsemanship.
That's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. this is a little too much for me. I'm not enjoying this. This is a relationship that creates a lot of stress for me, which inevitably causes stress for the horse, or in that way. But see, it's all about how you part. I feel that it's in the parting and moving on to the next level that there's a lot of growth for the person versus just saying, hey, I don't want the horse, chucking it away. I think there's in the evolution of arriving to that point, you can learn some skills and then part on good terms with a creature, hoping the best for them in their new life with someone else. As you kind of figure out where you are at, why that didn't work. Why didn't that work? It's like a relationship, two people divorce, and you hear all about the ex-wife, all about how horrible she was. The best thing that person could have done is been like, well, how was I in that relationship? What could I have done differently? What do I need to learn to be a better partner? I don't know if that
Right.
makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. But sometimes one out of the two would want to sit down and figure out why they did something wrong, and there's always one that
Yeah,
doesn't
doesn't want to.
do it
Yeah, I mean,
because they did nothing wrong, or they believe that they did everything they could to save it. So I can see that relationship a little bit better now between a person and a horse.
Mhm. And it is definitely sometimes is a mismatch physically. People on their riding abilities are, they're overhorsed. And maybe a trainer sold them that. I see this a lot. People come to me trying to figure that one out because maybe a former trainer sold them a horse that they could ride and would then imprison them to being in training forever and ever when they can't. So that's a real viable, that's a disconnect there. I mean, that person's not at that riding level. They literally
Right.
cannot keep up the gaits. The horse might be a little spooky and they can't handle spook like that. In that case, part of my job would be able to break that down for them and then consider how to part from this horse, match them with someone else, and really working with them to find a horse at their level. A lot of times people, it's like if you walk into a woman's closet, you'll see a ton of clothes are 2 sizes less than where because she wants to be there, she wants
Right,
to be
but
a
she's
size
not
4,
quite there.
but she's not quite there yet. But that's what motivates her. Sometimes you have people that have these horses and they're riding, they want to be there, but they're not there. I tell people all the time, get a horse that you, number one, enjoy their company. You walk it and you look forward to not even riding. You like their company. It's just like people. It's a feeling like
Oh,
I
like you
really
could just sit out in the pasture for hours. And
hours.
just
Even
yeah.
if I don't ride you, I love being with you. I just
sit
love
in the
spending
pasture.
time with you.
sit in their stall, groom them, pet them.
And then say, if I'm sitting on this horse, do I feel like he'll take care of me? He'll be okay. Then you're kind of starting to think about matching on a physical level. Sometimes when you have a good trainer, even if you're in love with a horse that may be a little overhorsed, you have some guidance. You just don't want to negotiate that alone because those sometimes can create disasters. And like if I'm not around, if I go to clinic and I see that, I'll try to match people with other trainers who I know they'll have someone's eye on them as they develop, as they come to
Right.
that level together. Sometimes I've seen matches where the horse is green, the rider's green, and yet with some guidance and taking their time, they grow together and they grow old together, and that's possible too.
It is possible.
But
Yeah, I've seen that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Your book, The Alchemy of Lightness. Tell me a little bit about this.
Yes, I'm very, I think, co-authoring it with Dominique Barbier is, I think, for me, was an experience in itself. Dominique is he's a world famous clinician. He's been saying the same thing. He's been preaching his philosophy in the same way for over 40 years. And that's what I admired about him. That's why teaming up with him to write this was, for me, an honor, because this is someone who in the industry has not wavered from that. Sometimes we can get seduced either by competition,
Yes.
by money, and we start a certain way, but he's been pretty pure across the board. I mean, I saw an article, an interview that was drawn up from the precursor of dressage today. I think it was Dressage Connection or something. It was an early article back in the early 80s of him when he first came to the country, and reading through it, nothing's changed in how he approaches horses, which I think is very rare. I don't see a lot of folks kind of from that space. So I was proud of that. The second part of it that I'm really proud about, Kathy, is look. I want to see if you get this. Okay. Okay. So if you look at this cover, what do you notice? Now,
Well,
tell me.
his posture is changed. His head is down. They're together here. I mean, but they're emotionally, their spirits are together. That's what I see. I see two spirits.
Okay, I'm going to hold it like this. Look at the shadow again and look at the person. Dun, 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 dun,
It's
dun,
not.
dun, dun.
It's not the same person.
Exactly. It's not the same person. This person, people that are familiar in the classical dressage world would identify that as Nuno Oliveira Mestre. Nuno Oliveira, a Portuguese rider
Okay.
who's considered one of the kind of masters of dressage, just masters of horsemanship that evolved and were classicist. And Dominique had studied with him earlier in his career. So this picture was taken in Brazil. An exact same image was then a year later taken in the same place in Brazil at the same time by the same photographer. And I have that photo on my phone somewhere, and you'll see that the shadow is of Dominique. So what I'm trying to, I guess the thing that interests me and I'm proud of in this book is it's basically an invitation to people that we already know how to ride. We understand, we can communicate with animals. Why? Because there's an old Indian adage that says, learning is remembering what you already know. In other words, we already through his story, like this, he, as being the master, being connected with Dominique imparts some of that on a molecular level. Like we access that through our ancestors. In our DNA, we already have a relationship with horses for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, just asking for help, from whatever divine spirit being that you adhere to, but knowing that that is our help, that we can access that. But that's really special to me, the fact that we have a lot more skills, and it's not about doing, it's about being. So the more you learn to be connected to the idea that you have that extra help accessible, the more you learn to be present, really present in your environment, instead of left rein, right leg, and all that, just the doing, the people pushing and pulling. And we have a lot more guardian angels help to help us through things. I don't say.
So this is a different person.
Yes. So if you today just
you know,
go on,
it's funny because when you look at this, the shadow lines up 100%.
yeah. And
So it almost, to me, when I saw this, yes, they're in their, I don't know what you'd call it, but their pose,
mhm.
professional pose, I guess, or their competition. They're getting ready. We're here. It's like these two are relaxed and becoming more one on a different level, rather than this. Yes, they are one here, and you can see that the horse is so alert and he's so relaxed, and his posture is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see they're working, but here they connect on a different level. That's when you said, and I knew his head is down. It's not the same person. It's no ponytail or whatever, but
Isn't it interesting,
it's
Kathy?
extremely, and everybody, I guess, who sees this probably sees a different thing than I do.
No, it's funny because initially people were, but once they see the shadows, they say, "Oh wow, but this doesn't look like the same person," and it doesn't. But people in the classical world that profile is very kind of typical.
Okay.
And you would know that. So the just partnering up, just being part of that kind of work. See, like a lot of this, it's interesting. If you go on Google, some people say, "Well, it's so esoteric," and yet it's our humanist that needs the step 1, blah blah blah, step 2, step 3. But if you read it, being a little bit more open, I tell people, read it, just take it, flip through it, and wherever your finger lands, that's the part of the text you need to know that day. So let's say you're about to go to the barn, flip through it, and wherever your finger lands, because if you start to read it from the beginning to end, it's so dense that it's overwhelming, and it actually could block your learning. You might be not enticed to. part of the other part of it is sometimes some of these, it's a philosophy, not so much a technique in there. So a lot of times people get frustrated with that because they want to step one, do this, but that would be such a disservice to the complexity and depth of any relationship. And there are things that you would need to know before, say, you get to this, more like as in Maslow we have the hierarchy of needs, a pyramid. You need to have food, water, shelter before you even start thinking about what makes me happy in my work. I mean, you need to just get the basic needs met.
Right.
So in riding, it's the same thing. You need to know how to steer a horse. You need to know how to stop. You need to know how to go. You need to feel sitting on an animal that you're going to be okay. If you have you need to spend time with an animal to know who he is. Once you get those kind of basic things, like a painter, with painting, basic brush strokes, the kind of higher level, higher order things, the refinement of writing, being able to sit and just kind of think piaf, you get it, without all the pushing and pulling. Those are what they call, in the hierarchy of needs, higher level things. Without the basic, do I feel comfortable with my horse? Can I spend time with him? Do I feel safe with him on some level? Some of these things can elude you. So sometimes it can be a little bit esoteric, and people go back to, well, I want to step one, step two, and I tell folks, look, aspire to being okay with the complexity of a relationship.
That's amazing. I can't wait to read this.
Have
And
to sign
I'm
it
going
for
to
you,
do
too.
exactly what you said. I'm just going to flip the page, and I'm going
And
to
just
read a
land
page.
where your little
and
finger lands. That's what you
and
need
see.
to hear that day.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Now, you have done some amazing things in I've read on your website, actually did an exhibition for Queen Elizabeth II.
Yes. A few years ago, I had, just through the Marwaris, I had done, there was the big, 60th Diamond Jubilee for the Queen Elizabeth. So, because of my connection with the Marwaris, we had to, India and England have had a special relationship for many years. So India is very special to the Queen's heart. It's a special relationship they have there, diplomatically speaking too. But I was part of the Indian entourage, so part of the riders doing the breed displays with the Marwari horses in Windsor, the Windsor Showground. Well, basically, it's Windsor Castle, and it's unbelievable what they did. For 2 weeks, they created like a housing for thousands of people and horses
Wow.
from all over the world. It was the most incredible I can't even tell, words can't even describe how, first of all, impressive it was to create housing for these animals. I think we had one horse die, a Canadian animal. Something happened or other. But to keep horses safe, we had people from Russia, Chile, the United States. We had some cowboy folks come in to do like an exhibition. The Indian entourage. We had the Omanis, the Sultan of Oman, the Omanis had a special camp on the showgrounds of their own. Just over 56 horses, over 150 riders, all women that were riding the Arab horses, create a big display. It was unprecedented. It was unbelievable. We had our Indian entourage was a special occasion because we partnered up with the Pakistani military, and we did a whole display. In fact, if you go on Google, YouTube, and you type in the Diamond 60th Jubilee,
Okay.
you'll see all the exhibitions, because it was televised in Europe, and we never saw anything. It was a big deal in Europe. We had the Italian Carabinieri ride. It was just spectacular. We had the French, it's eluding me. Just have to go and look on YouTube.
I will have to check that out.
And I think if you Google my name, I have even, somebody had taped me working with one of the horses in hand there. And it's kind of interesting. We had basically a week to exhibit and coordinate with all these groups around the world. And then the following week, we would display these animals every day. Basically, it was a week of a royal family member coming. And then the last day was the Queen, who arrived with her, with Prince Philip. And they watched, and that was televised. So it was very exciting. It was really such a learning experience riding with thousands of people there, on horses I didn't know. I had less than a week to prepare them in Spain. They weren't the horses I had here, the Marwari. I actually flew into Spain, had 2 weeks to rehearse with these horses.
Oh.
The poor things were, their life before was in the mountains off of Barcelona, you know, just eating their hay and being happy herd, to just all of a sudden being shipped to crossing the channel into England, and then having to put a show together. So
Oh, those poor babies.
yeah,
They
it
went
was-
through a lot.
yes, but we had it was just an amazing amazing experience. Just the level of professionalism for some of the groups I saw from around the world was incredible. Some of the horses, I saw horses that you wouldn't see here. There was the golden horse of Russia, it was Kazakhstan, I'm sorry, the golden horses of Kazakhstan. Beautiful animals. Animals you'd never see here.
Yeah, here you see thoroughbreds, quarter horses, some Dutch warm bloods, some German warm bloods. Basically, you don't see Icelanders here. You do see some. Oh my goodness, Kat, you trained one. And my brain took a break. Friesians and what's the other big black horse?
Persians?
Yes, thank you. Oh my goodness, my brain. Yeah, I mean, you see a few of them, but not many.
And
No.
when you travel to things like these venues outside, you do get to also meet not only the different breeds, but just the horsemen, and connecting to people about what they're doing in their countries. I really learned quite a lot, and just you riding on with all that chaos, and really negotiating that with horses that you don't really know.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun, and
Oh,
of course,
that'd
just
be-
the pumpetry, celebratory. Nobody does it like the Brits, I have to say. Like, I've never seen anything in all my life like that. They really do know how to put all the pomp and glory together, and it was a spectacular honor for her 60th years of reign. So, and she's an avid horse
She is.
person herself, so that was kind of a delight, a treat. There were some really interesting moments in there, but you have to go on the YouTube.
I'll
and
go on
Google it.
YouTube and look and Google that,
Yeah,
and I won't forget because it's
the 60th
kind of here
Diamond
the Jubilee. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That had to be an experience and a half.
yeah, it was. It was. We had, the funniest thing was the warm-up arenas, because we would be in a warm-up arena was nothing like you imagine. It's really, first of all, it was rainy. I mean, we talk about mud right now. It was muddy. The warm-up arena was just grass. It just, big acre of grass, and you had to be in there with people that carriage drivers,
Oh.
the cowboys, the Frisian drill teams, and everybody was practicing
At the same
at
time,
the same
going
time
in different
muddy,
directions.
not the muddy footing, and you really got very good about negotiating things. But every so often, as we be riding along, and somebody's just cursing as you cut them off, or because it's like a little bit of a free for all there. You'd see a royal passing by because it's their home, so you'd see
Right.
like Prince Harry walking by, and just as someone just came flying by cursing at you, so it was kind of a funny experience, I have to say. It was kind of cute.
Oh, it had to be. That's amazing. What stands out in your mind of the things that you've already accomplished?
The things I've accomplished, just some of the people that have gone above and beyond for me, and there's a couple of them. Some passed, and some of the horses that have passed that were great teachers. I think back about them. I always remember them when I go to church. I try to go to a mass twice a week, because I think that's important. You need to ask for divine intervention, especially when you're in any healing capacity or helping capacity. I need help. I need help to help others and to help myself. But I always pray for the people that have passed, that for me.
That were teachers, and
And I
a lot
asked
of them
them,
were.
and I asked them, like this man here in this shadow, I asked them for their help. I asked them for their insight, whether it be some kind of insight that I arrive at, and I know where it comes from. See, so So some of the people that have.
What would you like to accomplish? What would you like the world to know you by, in years to come?
Yeah.
I didn't put that right, but I think you kind of got the gist of it.
I think just as I am now, like if I live every day imagining that today is my last day. So I, someone that cared about the people that came into my life, somebody that, if I, tomorrow somebody had to put a eulogy together for me, in 20 years I'd want it to be, hopefully I have not been tainted by and seduced by some of the, I don't know how the word is, but maybe you can help me, Kathy, but some of the catchments that can draw you away from really I'm a purist at heart. It's like an equestrian artist, I see myself that way. So hopefully I have not changed from what I am
like
today.
A lot of some of the trainers have.
Like I would hope that if like a student, a friend came up with say, well, she was somebody that cared about me, cared about my horse, and cared that I was well with my horse, and that I've helped some people along the way. If I'm able to keep that,
that's great. It's wonderful. Now you are starting a second book. I think we mentioned briefly on that in the very beginning.
Yeah, and I always try to do projects with someone. I again, maybe because I'm a twin, I like partnerships. I like doing things where then there's a symbiotic plus for each of us. So Dominique did that for me when we worked together, gave me a chance to have some kind of a platform with the horses. He felt that I had something to say, maybe that was important. I hope to be able to give that to someone else and help their career in some way. So sometimes I like working with like young photographers or people new in the industry that need a platform.
Right.
And they can, so I like to, like I have a DVD for you too, Kathy. You told me to bring something. So we just,
we can't, okay.
They have it, but it's on YouTube. If you get a chance, if you just type my name, you'll find it. We just finished a project, and that gets submitted to the Equus Film Festival for this next year. I've had 2 films in the past that you showed in the Equus Film Festival. I always try to do either film projects or photographic things to draw people into that. This is just not, I'm going to barn, that we are involved in a masterpiece. That every day with our horse is an opportunity to be part of a moving art form.
I love the way you put that.
And so I try to involve, like our barn, we did a whole video, 6 minutes long, but you'll see it, it's very cute. But again, just showing how we are artistic, we are creators, we're creating an art form, just a simple walk. If you had a beautiful trot that day, that's as beautiful as any exuberant. I see sometimes someone trotting along, that's more impressive and beautiful in its simplicity than someone trying to get a piaffe or passage with jabbing the horse on the side.
And I've seen that.
So really telling people, don't worry about the big stuff. It's in the simple basics. If you can get that beautiful and clean and elegant, that others is icing on the cake. So we do a lot of these projects with young film companies or so the woman I'm partnering up, she's kind of like a surprise element, but she's a very special human being, and I want something for her, and as she evolves, I want that something to be in art writing. She's meant to write, she's meant to express herself, so hopefully this will also be an opportunity for her to work on a project that is meaningful for her. So.
That's great. Now, where can people buy this book?
They can buy it at the Barnes & Nobles. They can buy it through Trafalgar Square. I think I'm very proud of that. Trafalgar Square, great editors, great, they really pulled it together wonderfully. They could buy it on Amazon for cheaper. They can, I have some copies if they want a signed copy. It's anywhere you can go to Trafalgar Square directly, or I think Barnes & Nobles or Amazon, anywhere.
Great. Oh, that's great. Because I think this is a book that everyone should probably read.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter what discipline you're in, because a horse is a horse is a horse. Some horses, yes, their build is different.
Right.
It's my belief, and they are more in tune to a certain discipline, maybe more so than another horse. When you're looking at the different breeds, but a horse is still a horse.
That's
Just
right.
like people. We're all people. We're all the same. We're all genetically the same.
We have different talents.
Yes, different.
This is kind of a book that's across disciplines, and it doesn't. It's just a good theoretical foundation to start from. I think it invites people to seeing things a little differently, and maybe that little differently is the difference between in how they're relating to the horse and how they come.
It could just change one little thing. You
Right.
have opened up my mind, working with the trainers here in Jersey for years and then being a trainer and going, but I was always a trainer that said, hey, I got this horse, I can't figure it out. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah.
I'd call a couple of different people that I knew that I could trust. But a lot of the trainers today that I've seen don't do that. They think they can do it. It doesn't matter. And I see a lot of force. I see a lot of kids at the shows in tears.
Right.
And I see a lot of parents going, how come my kid didn't win?
Mm-hmm.
This has to go away.
Yeah.
And let the partnership be a partnership. Become one with your horse. And do what's best for the both of you. And I think you really hitting that right on the head with this, with everything you're talking about. Enjoy it.
Enjoy it, and we, at the heart of it, we have more things in common than not. Kathy, there's for anyone also that's interested in there's 3 things I tell people they need to if they want to be great with their horse, and it doesn't involve adapting my way of thinking or being a John Lyons certified or this person certified. It's 3 things you can start exploring on your own. Get good at understanding learning theory, and I'm talking about how mammals learn. How do we learn? Positive, negative reinforcement schedules. What does that mean? I have lectures during the year to introduce people. So I tell people sign up to my newsletter because through the year I do that. Just give lectures on basic learning theory, physiology of the horse, and then rider's position, so that people can move in from a hunt seat to a classical seat and know what that effect is on their horse. Those 3 things. And aside from the Umbra levels, these are like foundational things that one would need to understand.
Which I think a lot of people overlook
Yeah.
today. They overlook the foundation.
Yeah, they do, and they. I think what was I going to say? The other part of it is that the oneness with our animal, being able to sit on them and have a relationship, comes from recognizing their sphere. We lose our grounding, we are vulnerable, and I think that having that relationship with a horse, to feel like you're one, that their feet are now yours. It's a special thing. I watched the Olympics, the Special Olympics, people that don't have legs.
Right.
And you really see that oneness, because for them, now they can travel great distances. Now they can leap and they can dance, and you see that oneness. Well, I hate to say it in that way, but I sometimes come to my horse like I'm an amputee. If I'm, like, for example, if I have a horse in training that I'm a little bit timid around, I know that I'm somewhat scared, but I know I have to kind of override that, work with the horse. I have to give them the trust. I can't wait around for the horse to give me that. I have to give them the trust. So I'm
Right.
going to come in there and...
Terrific. Maria, thank you for being a guest. It is already 8 o'clock. I can't believe the time went so quickly. Again, just real quick, your email address, website, whatever, people can get in touch with you if they're interested.
Sure, it's www, and then it's Maria, M-A-R-I-A, and then my last name, Katsamannis, KATSAMANIS.com. And
Terrific. Thank you so much for coming on. You have really opened my mind even more so with horses and what we can do to become a better partner.
thank you, Kathy, for having me here. And I just want to thank anybody, all my supporters and constituents who are listening in, because I wouldn't be able to do this if not for the support of so many, behind me are so many wonderful people.
That's terrific. Really terrific. And thank you again, and good night all, and stay tuned next Monday night from 6 to 8. And we'll see you next week. Have a great, healthy week.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Maria.